How long were you there?
Well, I lived there for a couple of years.
No wonder you have so many lovely pictures. I didn't think you could have gotten them on a short vacation.
Well, you'd be surprised how much you can see, even on a brief vacation in Japan. The country's so visually rich in so many ways that you couldn't see all of its beauties and wonders if you lived there the rest of your life, and devoted it to traveling around and sightseeing. By the same token, there is so much to see that if you dedicate several weeks' vacation to it, they'll be remarkably filled with the most beautiful memories you can imagine.
When would you say is the best time to go?
Well, I think the best times would be in the spring, when the cherries are in bloom, and in the autumn, when the colors are just incredible. You might be surprised to know that the rainy month is June.
I admit it's usually easier for me to travel during the summer. My son is out of school, and of course I would want to take him with me. Would you absolutely not recommend my going in the summer?
Oh, not at all. No season is really terrible in Japan. The summer is quite hot, though, and the Japanese try to leave the coastal plains and go up into the mountains, so if you can arrange some other time, I rather think you'd prefer it. In May, the thaw is setting in on the lakes, and the island of Hokkaido is marvelous.
How about the winter? My son has several weeks off from school in the winter, too.
Well, it's very cold in January and February. Hokkaido is snow-covered, and the northern ports are frozen. There are snow festivals in the cities. I personally love it. And their holidays are different from ours, so depending on when you go, you might enjoy celebrating a Japanese holiday, and that's always fun.
What holidays are there in the winter?
Well, January 1st is New Year's Day, just as is the case here, but January 15th is Adults' Day, which is a day devoted to young people in their 20s. February 11th commemorates the foundation of Japan. November 3rd is Culture Day.
What are some summer holidays?
Well, September 24th is the autumn equinox, October 10th is Health and Sports Day, and September 15th is the Day of Respect for Old People.
Would you recommend a tour or traveling independently?
Well, I think that depends on your preference, of course, and the tours you can get. There is quite a variety. But if you take a tour organized from outside Japan, they usually cover a quick visit to Tokyo and the most important sites in Kyoto, Nara, Nikko, and Hiroshima. But what you consider the most important might not be what the organizer of the tour thinks is most important. You won't have to worry about money or anything else once you get there, but you may only get to see industrial cities and a few islands of art and history.
I like the idea of not having to worry about details, especially since I don't speak the Japanese language. But if I'm going to Japan, I want to see the real Japan, not just the surface or outskirts of it.
Well, then, you might consider a tour that's organized from within Japan itself, and quite a few are available, ranging from trips around all of Japan to just 1 or 2 day excursions. And they usually boast the best of hotel, travel, and restaurant accommodations. They're usually problem-free, and you do get to see quite a bit, but you miss a lot, too.
Would I miss anything you would consider important?
Personally, I think yes. As far as I know, there are no tours along the shores of the Sea of Japan or to the island of Hokkaido. The tour to the shores of the inland sea doesn't take you to Himeji, which is a wonderful castle I wouldn't want you to miss. On Kyushu, you'll have to decide whether you would rather see Kagoshima or Nagasaki, a decision that I wouldn't consider easy. Both are very worthwhile.
Will I get a fair sampling of Japanese life?
No, I wouldn't think so. You travel with a group of tourists, and, well, you pretty much have to stick together.
That does make the idea of traveling independently sound attractive. But I'm afraid of traveling in a country whose language I don't speak. What are the possibilities of hiring an interpreter? Do you think it would be worthwhile financially?
Oh, I don't really think it would be necessary. I can understand your fear of traveling in a country with an unfamiliar language, but I think you'll find that a great many people in the large cities speak some English, especially the places you're most likely to visit. And if you do choose to go off the beaten path where English is less likely to be spoken, I think you'll find that the Japanese will be friendly and helpful, and that you can usually communicate well enough with gestures, except that you shouldn't try to drive in Japan unless you speak the language, because the traffic signs and the town names are written only in Japanese.
What are my choices?
Well, the Japanese railway is quite developed, and the Japanese use it a great deal. For that reason, you have to buy your tickets and book your seats at least a few days in advance. But you can, besides buying separate tickets, if you're touring a certain area, buy a basic ticket that will cover the whole tour. The Japanese keep their trains clean and comfortable, and they boast one that is the fastest in the world.
Would you say it's for short, fast trips only then?
Oh, not at all. The trains can be fast, but you might still want to use them for the longer journeys. They even have eating facilities on board. There are local trains as well as express trains, but I would recommend against bringing large suitcases on them because there are very few porters except in Tokyo.
What about taxis?
Japan has more taxis than any other country in the world. But if you're taking longer trips, you might want to consider flying. Japan also has a fine internal air service.
I like the idea of taxis. I always like to use them as much as possible when I travel.
Well, let me warn you, there's one thing regarding the taxis of Japan. The drivers control the opening of the rear doors. And you'd be surprised how many tourists don't know this and actually suffer injuries which can ruin that trip.
Well, being forewarned of that, would you say the taxis are a good way to travel?
Well, the drivers won't store your luggage or packages, so you have to do that yourself. And few of them speak English, but other than that, I see no reason why you shouldn't travel by taxi. I personally, however, would rather take a tour coach at first, especially since you said you don't like to have to worry about details when you're traveling. There are thousands of organized trips every day of the week, and there are regular buses, too, which are also kept very clean and are comfortable, and there are often hostesses who give running commentaries, complete with poetry and songs.
Well, that sounds like fun. What are some of the things you would include on a list of places a traveler to Japan might see?
Well, I assume you would want to go to Tokyo.
Oh, of course. I can't imagine going to Japan and not spending a good amount of time in Tokyo.
Then there are several places I would say you absolutely have to see, and one is the Imperial Palace.
Is it really an old castle?
Old? That's an understatement. It was built over 500 years ago for the Tokugawa shogun, and it's been used as the royal residence since 1869, when Emperor Meiji moved the capital of Japan from Kyoto to Tokyo. It's surrounded by moats, a high rock wall, pine forests, and gardens, and it's the most remarkable example of East meeting West you're likely to find in any one place or close proximity. The palace is said to be a paradox of stillness, but with its swans in the moat and the pine forests, a paradox of stillness in the middle of the world's largest and possibly noisiest metropolis.
Can you actually go inside the palace grounds?
If you apply at least one day in advance at the Imperial Household Agency, or sign up for a tour which includes a visit inside the grounds.
Are there tours that take you inside the castle?
Unfortunately, no, but it's worth it just to see the grounds. And if you don't go inside the grounds even, it would still be worth your time to at least look through the gates at the beauty of the place. On January 2nd, and on the Emperor's birthday, you can get into the grounds without special permission, and the Emperor and the royal family appear on the balcony.
What else should I visit in Tokyo?
The Tokyo Tower. It offers a fabulous view of the city. You go up a 30-passenger elevator to an observation platform which is several hundred feet up in a steel spire. It's higher than the Eiffel Tower, 1,092 feet. It's a very popular spot for sightseeing, especially among the Japanese.
I'm not all that crazy about heights, but my son will love it.
Well, what are you crazy about then?
The sights that can be categorized as those of everyday Japanese life, Street scenes, things like that. Any scenery of great beauty, landscapes, parks, things like that, and anything historical. Old architecture. I wish, for instance, that there were tours that would take me inside the Imperial Palace.
Well, there is a tour of the Kasaka Detached Palace, and it's near Yotsuya Station. It was used by the Emperor Meiji while the main Imperial Palace was being rebuilt. And it's been renovated, but it has luxurious rooms, and there are fabulous paintings from the French and Japanese artists. It looks more like an 18th century European palace than it does a Japanese one, though I can't say it's really representative of Japanese architecture.
It might be interesting to see anyway, but I would rather see sites that would classify more as beautiful spots or authentically historic. Isn't Japan supposed to be known for its beautiful gardens?
Oh, yes, and its parks. And the parks are not just beautiful, but they contain museums, temples, art galleries, stadiums, and, of course, the gardens. For instance, there's Ueno Park. It's the largest one in Tokyo, 210 acres, and it's known for Cherry Hill. And in April, it's one of the best places to see the fabulous cherry blossoms. It boasts one of the largest zoos in the world where the animals are kept in what is close to a very natural kind of habitat. And there's the aquatic zoo, too. And the Tokyo Metropolitan Festival Hall is in the park and has superb musical and cultural offerings.
That's the kind of place I like to go to when I travel. It has a little bit of everything, something for everyone.
Well, then, if it's parks you like, there's also the Hibiya Park. It faces the Imperial Palace across the moat, so you might want to see it on that very same day you visit the palace. And it's also very beautiful. Plants and greenery. It has an outdoor theater for concerts on weekend afternoons. And if you're fond of chrysanthemums, you'll love Hibiya Park in November.
I love all flowers. The gardens are a major reason I want to go to Japan. Tell me about some of the gardens I can visit.
Well, as soon as I tell you about a couple of more parks. Now, one is in the campus of the University of Tokyo in Hongo District, which has a small woodland lake and an old brick tower. The other is Meiji Park, or Meiji Shrine Outer Garden, which has sports arenas and the National Athletic Stadium.
My son would like that, but I'm really more interested in the gardens.
Well, I think every park in Japan has a marvelously landscaped garden. Of special interest, I think, in Tokyo is the Hamarikyu Onshi Garden. It's 61 acres, it has a tidal pool, 3 bridges shaded by wisteria vines, and the Kiyosumi Garden is more famous for its rocks, which were brought from all over Japan, and it's typical of the Meiji period. The Korakuen, however, has more of a Chinese influence, with its stone bridge called the Full Moon Bridge. It's built in a half circle, so that with its reflection, it forms a circle.
My, that sounds lovely.
Oh, it is. And then there's Rikujien Garden, which has a pond, and Shinjuku Gyoen, the rare cherry trees and chrysanthemums can be seen there. Its Japanese garden is supposed to be one of the most beautiful in all of Japan, but it also has a French-style garden and an English-style garden on its 144 acres.
All those famous gardens. How wonderful.
And that's just in Tokyo. If you're going to travel throughout Japan, you'll find gardens that are just as lovely in Kyoto, Kanazawa, Mito, Okayama, and Takamatsu.
Oh, tell me about some of them. I have no intention of just seeing the gardens in one city. After all, it's all of Japan that's known for its gardens.
All right, well, I'll try to do that in just a moment. Well, Mito is about 2 hours northeast of Tokyo, so unless you're going there anyway...
Oh, tell me about it anyway. I have no idea whether or not I will go to Mito, so I want to hear about its famous gardens just in case.
Well, you'll love it if you have a thing for apricot trees. There are about 3,000 Japanese apricot trees in the garden in Mito, the Kairakuen Garden. And it was built by Lord Narioki in 1842.
When did the trees bloom?
Late February to mid-March. Now, do you like fountains?
Oh, of course. Are there some gardens that are famous for beautiful fountains, too?
In Takamatsu, there is Ritsurin Park, which not only has fountains, but huge rocks and a natural forest of pines, and a zoo, an art gallery, and a commercial museum.
Sounds marvelous. I love the variety of being able to see so much in one place. Where is Takamatsu?
Well, it's on the northern coast of Shikoku, south of Okayama, which is about an hour and a quarter west of Osaka. Okayama also has a garden known for its variety with trees of pine, maple, cherry, and Japanese apricots, waterfalls, and ponds. But if it is variety that impresses you, you will definitely want to go to Karakuen Park. The word means combining 6 features, and these features are vastness, solemnity, careful arrangement, venerability, coolness, and scenic charm. Now, the coolness is because of the running water. Besides the waterfall, though, there are 3 artificial hills, 2 ponds, a stone lantern on the lake shore, beds of iris, groves of azalea, stands of cherry.
If it's anything like what I'm imagining, just by hearing your description, I think I'm going to want to live there. Where is it?
It's in Kanazawa. But if you want to live in a city that is filled with gardens, the place for you is Kyoto. There are the Kaetokuji Temple Gardens, planned by Enshu Kobore, who lived from 1576 to 1647. He is supposed to have been the best landscape gardener of his time. And there's the Ginkakuji Garden, or the Silver Pavilion Garden, which has marvelous stone groupings, stone bridges, and a waterfall. And the original features date from the 15th century, and they are preserved in their entirety. Some people consider it to be the most beautiful garden in Kyoto, but I personally have a very special spot in my heart for the Saihoji Temple Moss Garden, which was laid out in the 14th century.
Is that why you have a special fondness for it?
No, I think my attraction for it is mostly because I like the idea of a garden being done entirely in moss. Now, there are almost 40 species of them, yellows and greens, in a typical example of a stroll garden. You have to see it to understand the unusual beauty.
It certainly does sound unusual. I like the idea of a garden that was laid out all those years ago still being there today, and in good condition.
Well, it's not all that unusual. The Nanzenju Temple Garden was also laid out in the 14th century, and it is a sand garden. Now, how's that for unusual? Most of them are cold and very balanced looking, but this one really isn't.
I don't think I'd particularly like a sand garden.
Oh, but you must see one if you get the opportunity. It isn't the same kind of beauty as a flower garden, but well worth seeing, believe me. Still, if you're impressed with gardens that are old, there is one that dates from about 1394. Now, is that old enough for you?
I should think so.
Well, it's the Gold Pavilion, or Kinkakuji Temple Garden, with a brook that runs into a small lake that has a maple grove on one side. And it also has a tea house known for its design.
Enough. I've heard enough about beautiful gardens. I definitely want to go to Japan.
Well, then, let me recommend at least one schedule of places to go and things to see.
Please do recommend as many as you can think of.
Well, it'll depend on how long you're going to be there, but I would say you should spend at least a week in Tokyo and include a couple of tours. The one-day tour of Nikko, Kamakura, Hakone, and Mount Fuji. And you can take an independent day tour of Yokohama, leave Tokyo from Shinagawa Station, go on a train for about half an hour to Yokohama and explore that city with lunch in the Chinese Quarter and get back to Tokyo in the evening.
And of course, I'll want to see the gardens, as many as I can squeeze into my schedule. You also mentioned Kyoto as a wonderful city for gardens. Do you have any recommendations of how to see Kyoto?
Well, you'll want to spend at least a week there, I know. Besides the gardens, I would recommend a day tour of Nara, another of Esashima, another of Koyasan, and another of Osaka.
Won't I get tired of all these tours?
I don't think so. You said you like to not have to worry about details, and all of the tours are different from one another and have different things to offer. Again, depending on the amount of time you have, you can add variety by seeing island tours in between those city tours.
Do you have any island-type tours to recommend?
Well, I think it's a must to see the island of Hokkaido, and if you do that, then there's a tour to Matsushima. And the tour even includes a boat trip around the island. And, of course, you don't have to take a tour every day, just as long as you take a couple of tours, the ones that interest you the most. And you can also be doing things on your own.
Like what?
Well, I would make sure that I bathed in a hot spring at least once. And I would definitely spend some time on the shores of the inland sea, a week or so if I had it. And don't forget the island of Kyushu. And while you're there, include a trip to the volcano near Kagoshima. Visit Fukuoka and take a ferry to Shimbara.
Will you give me the names of the best places to stay during my visit?
Well, that depends, of course, on what you think is best. There are, of course, Western-style hotels, but I really wouldn't recommend those to anybody traveling in Japan.
Are they that bad?
Oh, no, they're fine. Some of them are quite nice. But if you're going to Japan, I think it would be plain old silly not to do it the Japanese way and go to a ryokan.
Is that a Japanese hotel?
Well, it's more like a traditional Japanese inn, and the price includes the room, the evening meal, and breakfast. They're becoming harder and harder to find, unfortunately, because they're made of wood and they're therefore rather expensive to build. But you simply should not go to Japan without staying in at least one. It's an incredible experience in hospitality and Eastern ways.
I bet the people who work there are very polite all the time, right?
Well, that doesn't begin to describe it. As soon as you enter a ryokan, you remove your shoes, and immediately someone in a kimono will bring you a pair of slippers, and then a hostess will take you to your room. There, you leave your slippers in a little entrance, and as soon as you enter your room, someone brings you hot green tea. And if it's near the end of the afternoon, your bath, a sunken tub, will be filled for you.
It sounds wonderful.
Oh, it is. They even give you a kimono to wear. And after your bath, you'll put it on and have dinner brought to you in your room. Few ryokans have somebody who speaks English well, so since you don't speak Japanese and can't order a specific meal, they'll just bring you a variety of food. And don't worry, though. I guarantee there will be plenty there that will suit your taste. And after dinner, your table will be pushed up against the wall, and the mattresses will be taken out, and your nightlight will be lit for you.
Practically everything is done for you.
Well, that's one of the reasons why many people who visit Japan think it's one of the best parts about their visit. You can't imagine the feeling of, after a tiring day of sightseeing, of simply being pampered. Everybody should experience that at least once.
It seems like you feel that way about all of Japan.
Well, if I give that impression, it's because it's true. It's that combination of serene beauty and ancient custom against the thriving industrial aspects of the nation. It's the contrast of Eastern civilization and Western culture. There are the old gardens and Mount Fuji, unchanging symbols of a country that has held on to many things and ways for centuries, and there are the modern buildings like those found in any modern city. If I were you, I would definitely want to go and see everything when visiting Japan.